The American automotive landscape witnessed a stunning March sales surge, the strongest in 4 years, as consumers rushed to purchase vehicles ahead of looming tariff implementation. This unexpected buying frenzy contradicted Cox Automotive's initial projections of sluggish sales. Buyers are scrambling to acquire new vehicles before President Trump's sweeping tariffs on imported automobiles, parts, steel, and aluminum take effect. While Trump announced a 90-day pause on many Liberation Day tariffs, the auto industry remains significantly impacted as the hold doesn't apply to vehicle-related imports. Economic forecasters have dramatically revised their outlook, with Cox Automotive predicting this purchasing rush might extend into May until pre-tariff inventory depletes. Their analysis suggests dramatic price increases by mid-year will substantially slow sales momentum. Japanese brands including Honda, Subaru, and Nissan have seen particularly strong demand as consumers mistakenly assume all their vehicles are imported. Interestingly, 8 of America's top 12 most domestically produced vehicles actually come from non-American manufacturers. The financial implications appear severe. Arthur Laffer, who received Trump's Presidential Medal of Freedom, projects nearly $5,000 in additional costs per new vehicle. While Laffer believes Trump's negotiation skills could leverage these tariffs toward better trade agreements, he warns sustained implementation could prove disastrous for global economies. Multiple analysts forecast troubling outcomes. Wedbush projects up to 20% reduction in new purchases with typical price increases between 5,000–10,000. The Center for Automotive Research estimates $108 billion in additional costs for U.S. manufacturers in 2025 alone. Their calculations suggest imported vehicles will face $8,722 in additional taxes, while Detroit's Big Three will experience $8,641 increases, making domestic vehicles only marginally cheaper. The United Auto Workers celebrated the tariffs as ending 3 decades of free trade disaster, yet automotive companies have responded with diverse strategies. Ford and Stellantis introduced temporary employee pricing promotions, Jaguar Land Rover halted U.S. shipments entirely, and Hyundai promised 2 months without price increases. Can these costs be absorbed? Industry data suggests impossible math. Manufacturers typically earn $2,400 per vehicle, while dealers average $1,200, margins insufficient to absorb multi-thousand-dollar tariff impacts without consumer price hikes. Despite UL optimism, workforce consequences already appear bleak. Stellantis has furloughed 9,000 U.S. workers, and research indicates the Big Three will likely see approximately $5 billion in operating profit reductions this year. This translates to hourly workers potentially losing $1,005,000 in profit sharing, alongside bonus reductions across salaried positions, executives, and supplier workforces. Not all effects are negative. GM recently announced increased light truck production at its Fort Wayne facility. Nevertheless, the 25% auto tariffs will impact roughly $460 billion in annual imports. Anticipating these measures, importers began strategic planning immediately following November's election. Shipping data reveals February's year-over-year increases in vehicle shipments: 22% from the EU, 14% from Japan, and 15% from South Korea. One industry insider admitted filling U.S. warehouses immediately after last summer's assassination attempt, believing it foreshadowed Trump's victory. Currently, thousands of vehicles remain at U.S. ports where storage fees accumulate as manufacturers delay tariff payments by postponing removal. Many executives hope for short-lived tariffs and are attempting to wait them out, though port capacity concerns loom large. The winners and losers emerging from this situation reveal complex supply chain realities. Smaller manufacturers like Jaguar Land Rover, Lotus, and Mini face significant disadvantages without U.S. manufacturing presence. Similarly, Audi imports all its U.S. offerings. Even Volkswagen, despite substantial U.S. manufacturing, imports approximately 2/3 of its U.S. sold vehicles. GM faces particular challenges despite extensive U.S. manufacturing due to its reliance on Canadian and Mexican production networks. The unpredictable policy environment makes factory reconfiguration financially risky, with investments potentially wasted if tariffs suddenly change. Luxury brands like McLaren, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce, and Ferrari may better weather these challenges as their brand value partly derives from foreign craftsmanship, allowing easier tariff pass-through. Ferrari has already implemented 10% price increases on ordered but undelivered vehicles. Porsche, meanwhile, will honor existing order pricing while contemplating future adjustments. Ford, Hyundai, Kia, Tesla, and Rivian appear less vulnerable due to extensive U.S. manufacturing footprints. However, even predominantly American-built vehicles will face significant cost pressures from foreign components, especially Chinese-sourced parts potentially taxed up to 145%. The Center for Automotive Research projects $108 billion in new taxes for Detroit's Big Three, and consumers can't simply avoid price increases by buying American-made vehicles. When foreign competitors raise prices, domestic manufacturers can follow suit to increase profit margins, often the intended outcome of tariff policies. German manufacturers BMW and Mercedes face particular exposure since many parts for their US-assembled vehicles come from Europe. Subaru imports all powertrains from Japan, creating another vulnerability point. Despite donating $1 million to Trump's inauguration, Toyota faced direct criticism in the tariff announcement speech, with Trump calling Japan the worst violator and asserting the friend is worse than the foe in trade. Toyota has signaled plans to reduce manufacturing costs rather than immediately passing increases to consumers. Implementations compound these issues. The classification of national origin remains ambiguous, with some products potentially facing layered tariffs totaling up to 245%. Previous cases, such as U.S. Customs reclassifying Swedish-built Volvos as Chinese due to component sourcing, demonstrate this complexity. Particularly concerning is the White House proclamation that any inaccurately declared non-U.S. content will trigger the 25% tariff on an entire vehicle regardless of actual domestic content, creating significant compliance risk. Trump has explicitly stated he couldn't care less if car prices rise. Industry analysts predict U.S. manufacturers will likely focus on larger, heavier SUVs and pickup trucks typically assembled domestically with higher profit margins. With new car prices already averaging $50,000, affordable models may disappear entirely. Manufacturers seem unlikely to invest billions in new factories until convinced of tariff permanence. Should they eventually build, higher costs will be passed to American consumers who would pay more than anyone worldwide for vehicles, yet these facilities would quickly become unprofitable if tariffs were eventually removed. The used car market reflects this turmoil. Some dealerships now offer to buy back previously sold vehicles at above new prices due to inventory shortages driven by pre-tariff buying rushes. Consumer behavior shows bifurcation, some accelerating purchases before prices rise while others delay due to economic concerns. International responses complicate matters further. Canada's retaliatory tariffs specifically target U.S. manufacturers through component origin calculations. China's counter-tariffs have forced Tesla to stop taking Chinese orders for U.S.-built Model S and Model X vehicles. Consumer boycotts of American products have emerged globally, including barcode scanning apps for identifying U.S. goods. European travel to America has plummeted, with booking cancellations 16% higher year-over-year, reaching 40% from business centers. Forbes reports a 70% drop in Canada-U.S. travel. Financial markets reflect these concerns with soaring default insurance costs in Europe's auto industry. Already struggling manufacturers like Aston Martin face particular exposure with 37% of revenue from U.S. customers. Component suppliers may suffer most due to their thinner profit margins. The implementation has appeared chaotic, with major announcements followed by partial delays or contradictory statements. Semiconductor-related tariffs remain particularly confused, with weekend announcements about exemptions for smartphones and computers quickly walked back by the Commerce Secretary. Professor Keu Jin from Lee's argues the current approach may inadvertently accelerate China's technological advancement rather than suppressing it. By applying highest tariffs to advanced technologies while maintaining them on basic manufacturing, these policies potentially redirect Chinese resources toward higher value production, precisely opposing stated objectives. While economists broadly agree global trade needs rebalancing, the current implementation appears to damage business and consumer confidence both domestically and internationally.